This is where the mystery begins. If the Legion has a king and the Dynasty has an emperor, then who leads the Heralds?
The gates of shadows fell, but shadow energy crept into this world.
Greetings, Shadow Fighters, and welcome back to Void Room. Today we have a new program that we call Shadow's Gate, Unveiling the Mysteries of Shadow Fight, the podcast that delves deeper into the lore and secrets behind the game Shadow Fight 3. I'm Shibata, and today we're going to tackle one of the most intriguing and confusing questions in the world of Shadow Fight 3. Who exactly is the leader of the Herald faction? To help us untangle this knot, I'm joined by an unparalleled lore expert, Stranger. Welcome, Stranger.
Thank you, Shibata. It's great to be here.
Stranger, we know that the world of Shadow Fight 3 is dominated by three major factions: the Legion, the Dynasty, and the Heralds. The first two factions have fairly clear leadership structures. Could you tell us a bit about them?
Of course. Let's start with the Legion. They are a highly disciplined, militaristic faction, with the primary goal of eradicating shadow energy from the world. Their leadership is very structured, led by a king of the Legion known for his wisdom and kind heart. In fact, the original king of the Legion even sacrificed himself to protect his kingdom from the Scourge threat. After him, leadership was briefly held by Iolanda, before eventually being taken over by Shadow.
So, a clear line of succession in the Legion. What about the Dynasty?
The Dynasty, on the other hand, is a faction centered on martial arts and adaptation. They are led by an emperor. This emperor was once a prince, who then became a leader who wisely utilized shadow energy for his nation's prosperity, although this often conflicted with the Legion's views. After the emperor, his daughter, June, inherited the title. So both the Legion and the Dynasty have leaders with clear titles and traceable lines of succession.
This is where the mystery begins. If the Legion has a king and the Dynasty has an emperor, then who leads the Heralds? This faction is described as the most mysterious, right?
Exactly, Shibata. The Heralds are the most enigmatic faction. They are known for their profound mastery of shadow energy and advanced shadow-based technologies. They are often compared to a dormant volcano that can erupt at any moment, with a fighting style that is incredibly precise, fast, and deadly. Even the high and mighty of other factions tend to avoid direct confrontation with them. However, there's no explicit King of Heralds or Emperor of Heralds mentioned in the early lore. This is what leaves many players wondering.
That's fascinating. So they are very powerful and mysterious. Can you tell us more about these unique characteristics of the Heralds? For example, do they have a large army like the Legion?
That's a great question, Shibata, and the answer actually adds another layer to their mystery. Despite their superior technology and feared warriors, the Heralds actually have no real army. Most of their members are merely civilians skilled with a weapon. This suggests that their strength lies more in individual quality and technological innovation, such as their ability to manipulate time loops, which puts them in a superior position.
So, traditional military might isn't their focus. What about their social interactions? Are they open with other factions?
Not really. The general populace tends to dread these gloomy, taciturn fighters in dark attire, and often gives them a wide berth. The Heralds also tend to operate from their invisible dome. Although this invisible dome is located within Dynasty territory, and they collaborate closely, the Heralds are explicitly considered an independent state. This is crucial, as it means they have their own sovereign internal leadership structure, separate from the Dynasty Emperor. So, the Dynasty Emperor is not the leader of the Heralds.
That eliminates one major possibility. So, who are the names that frequently come up in discussions about Herald leadership? Are there strong candidates?
Within the community, names like Itu, Lynx, and Azuma are often cited as the strongest heroes of the Herald faction. Bolo and Okada also appear in the context of leadership. However, as time went on and deeper lore was explored, a significant clue began to emerge repeatedly: the title of Chancellor.
Chancellor? That's a different title from King or Emperor. Can you elaborate on this title and who holds it?
Absolutely. This title of Chancellor is key to understanding Herald leadership. It implies a different kind of authority, perhaps more administrative, scientific, or even political, rather than monarchical. According to the game's lore, particularly in Shadow Fight Arena, E2 is specifically referred to as the current Chancellor.
So, I2 is the Chancellor. But I've also often heard the name Bolo mentioned in connection with Herald leadership. What's the relationship between Bolo and E2?
Well, this is where the story of Herald leadership becomes incredibly complex and fascinating, Shibata. The lore reveals that Bolo was the original leader of the Heralds and the first Dome's Chancellor. He was also a blacksmith who aspired to master shadow power and later became E2's mentor. However, Bolo is described as a corrupt figure, responsible for many accidents and deaths at the Herald's Academy, showing little to no remorse.
So Bolo was E2's predecessor. Is this a normal succession?
Not normal at all. This is the core of the Herald leadership paradox. Narratives within the lore imply that Bolo is E2, Bolo created E2, which created Bolo, and so on. This is a contradiction that demands a deeper explanation. The original E2, referred to as the real E2, was the one who defeated Bolo. He used memory-altering technology replicated from Mnemos to completely erase the real Bolo and replace him.
Erase and replace? But that happened?
The process is highly unique. The real E2 is described as stopping time and fighting Bolo for 30 years. During this prolonged battle, E2 was slowly erasing Bolo from existence while simultaneously replacing him. This means that the succession of Herald leadership is not linear or a traditional inheritance, but rather a process of rewriting history, or assimilation of identity through time manipulation.
Incredible. So, who is the E2 we know in the game then?
After the real E2 replaced Bolo, he created a clone to take his own place. This explains why Bolo looks exactly like the original E2. So, the E2 who was the protagonist's companion in Chapter 2 is Bolo, and the old E2 in Chapter 7 is Bolo, who had been replaced by the real E2. The existence of these complex layers of identity, and the potential for deliberate deception or confusion in Herald leadership, suggests that the leader we know might not be the original, or might have a shifting identity history.
So after all this in-depth explanation, stranger, can you give us the definitive conclusion? Who is truly the leader of the Herald faction in Shadow Fight 3?
All right, Shibata. After untangling all these threads, we can conclude that the leader of the Herald faction holds the title of Chancellor. Historically, Bolo was the first Chancellor and the original leader of the Heralds. However, through a complex series of events involving time and identity manipulation, the original E2, the real E2, defeated and paradoxically replaced Bolo, becoming the next Chancellor. The E2 we know in Shadow Fight 3 and Shadow Fight Arena is a manifestation of E2 who has taken on this role, or even a clone created during this replacement process. Thus, the Heralds do not have a king in the traditional sense like the Legion, or an emperor like the Dynasty. Instead, they are led by a Chancellor, a title that reflects the nature of their faction, which is more focused on knowledge, technology, and even the manipulation of reality. Their leadership succession is also far more complex and paradoxical, involving shifts in identity and time manipulation, which truly sets them apart from the other factions. This confirms that the Herald leadership is a true reflection of the mysterious and advanced nature of the faction itself, an entity that not only masters shadows, but also the very essence of time and identity.
An absolutely amazing revelation, stranger. This truly opens our eyes to the complexity of Shadow Fight 3's lore. Thank you so much for this incredibly detailed and enlightening explanation.
You're most welcome, Shibata. Glad I could share.
And that concludes this episode of Shadow's Gate. We've unveiled the mystery behind the Herald faction's leadership, from the clear king of the Legion and emperor of the Dynasty, to the enigmatic Chancellor of the Heralds, E2, and his predecessor, Bolo. Don't miss our next episode for more Shadow Fight mysteries. I'm Shibata. See you next time.